The child's blood left a trail in the snow, red against white, life against death. She'd walked 3 miles in bare feet through a Wyoming blizzard, and when Caleb Thornton opened his cabin door, she collapsed into his arms, whispering words that would haunt him forever. "They beat me. My uncle says I belong to him now." He hadn't touched another human being in 8 years. Hadn't wanted to. But as he looked down at the broken child bleeding in his arms, Caleb Thornton knew his days of hiding were over. If you want to know what happens next, subscribe to this channel and follow this story to the end. Comment below with the city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The knock came at midnight. 3 weak taps against oak, then nothing. Caleb Thornton set down his chisel and listened. The wind screamed through the pines outside his cabin 28 below and dropping fast. Nobody came up here. Nobody had reason to. He'd made sure of that 8 years ago when he built this place 5 miles from town, far enough that even the most determined visitor would think twice. The knock came again. Weaker this time. He grabbed his rifle and crossed to the door. His boots made no sound on the pine floor. 8 years of living alone had taught him to move quiet. Think quiet, be quiet. He pulled the door open. The child fell across his threshold like a rag doll dropped from heaven's hand. Caleb caught her before she hit the floor. His hands scarred from woodwork and war closed around arms thin as kindling. She weighed nothing. Less than nothing. "Please." Her voice came out cracked, frozen. "Please don't send me back." He carried her inside and kicked the door shut against the howling wind. The fire in the hearth threw shadows across the room, across the small workbench where an unfinished wooden wagon sat waiting. Had been waiting for 8 years. He laid the child on his bed, and that's when he saw it. The blood. Soaked through the back of her dress, fresh and bright against fabric that had once been white. He turned her gently, carefully, the way he'd learned to handle wounded men at Gettysburg, and his jaw went tight. Belt marks. Deep ones, crossing her back like railroad tracks, some fresh, some scabbed over, some scarred white from months of healing and re-breaking. Someone had beaten this child like she was livestock, like she was less than livestock. "Who did this to you?" She didn't answer. Her eyes had rolled back, consciousness slipping away like water through fingers. Caleb worked fast. He heated water. Found the salve he used for rope burns and wood splinters, tore his cleanest shirt into bandages. His hands were too big for this kind of work, always had been, but he'd learned gentleness once. Anna had taught him. She'd guided his rough fingers across their newborn son's face, showing him how to touch something precious without breaking it. That was before the diphtheria took them both. He pushed the memory down, focused on the child in front of him. She was maybe 10 years old. Red-brown hair matted with snow and something darker. Green eyes when they'd been open, bright with terror. Her feet were bare, the soles torn and bloody, frostbite already blackening 2 toes on her left foot. 3 miles. He said it out loud, though nobody was listening. You walked 3 miles through this storm in bare feet. What kind of fear made a child do that? He wrapped her feet, cleaned and bandaged her back, pulled the quilt up to her chin, the one Anna had stitched during her pregnancy, blue and yellow squares she'd said would be perfect for a boy's room. Then he sat in the chair by the fire and waited. She woke just before dawn. Her eyes flew open and she scrambled backward, hitting the wall, hands raised to protect her face. "Easy." Caleb didn't move from his chair. "Easy now, you're safe." "Where am I?" Her voice was hoarse, raw. "My cabin. 5 miles north of Silver Creek." "Who are you?" "Name's Caleb Thornton. I'm a carpenter. Build wagons mostly." He kept his voice low, steady. The way you'd talk to a spooked horse. "You knocked on my door last night. Collapsed on my floor." She looked around the cabin, taking in the workbench, the tools, the unfinished wagon in the corner. Her eyes stopped on the rifle leaning against the wall. "You gonna hurt me?" No. Everybody says that. I ain't everybody. She studied him for a long moment. He let her look. At 6'3", with shoulders like an ox and a scar running from his chin to his ear, he knew what he looked like. Dangerous. The kind of man women crossed the street to avoid, and men thought twice about challenging. But this child didn't flinch. "My name's Emma," she said finally. "Emma Grace Hartwell." Hartwell. The name rang a bell somewhere in the back of his mind. Thomas Hartwell's girl, the rancher over in Section 14. Her face crumpled. Just for a second, then she pulled it back together, and Caleb recognized that look. He'd worn it himself for months after the funeral. "My papa's dead. Mama too. Wagon accident last September. Wheel came off on Miller's Pass." "I heard about that. I'm sorry." "Don't be." Her voice went flat. "It wasn't an accident." Caleb leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "Uncle Jasper did something to the wheel. I heard him talking to a man about it. 2 days before it happened, he said—" She stopped, swallowed hard. "He said soon he'd have everything that should have been his all along." "Your uncle." "Jasper Hartwell, Papa's brother." Emma touched the bandages on her arm, feeling the shape of the wounds beneath. "After they died, he showed up with papers. Said he was my guardian now. Said the ranch was his to manage until I came of age. But he doesn't want to manage it. He wants me gone." "Gone how?" "Dead." She said it simple matter of fact, the way no child should ever say that word. "Dead like Mama and Papa. Then there's nobody left and the land is all his." Caleb's hands tightened on the arms of his chair. "That's a serious thing to say, girl." "It's a serious thing to live." She pushed the quilt aside and tried to stand, but her legs buckled. Caleb caught her before she fell. "You ain't going nowhere, not with feet like that." "I have to go." Panic crept into her voice. "If he finds me here, he'll hurt you too. He hurts everyone who helps me, Mrs. Chen at the general store, she gave me food once. Next week her shop burned down. Mr. Holloway at the livery stable, he let me sleep in the hay. His horses got sick. All of them." "And you think your uncle did that?" "I know he did." Emma looked up at him with eyes too old for her face. "He told me. Every time someone helped me, he'd tell me what he did to them. Said it was my fault. Said if I just stopped making trouble, stopped trying to run, he wouldn't have to hurt anyone else." Caleb felt something stir in his chest. Something he'd buried 8 years ago beneath grief and guilt and the deliberate numbness of isolation. It felt like anger. It felt like purpose. "When's the last time you ate?" Emma blinked at the change in subject. 2 days ago, maybe 3. Uncle Jasper locks the pantry." He crossed to the small kitchen area, pulled out bread and dried meat and the last of the apples he'd stored for winter. "Eat slow. Your stomach ain't used to food." She didn't argue. Took small bites, chewing carefully, watching him the whole time, like she expected him to snatch it away. "Why are you helping me?" "Because you knocked on my door." "That's it." Caleb thought about the question. About Anna and Samuel. About 8 years of silence and sawdust, and the small wooden wagon he couldn't finish, because finishing it would mean admitting they were really gone. "Someone helped me once," he said finally. "Long time ago in a war. I was dying in a collapsed mine shaft, and a stranger dug me out, carried me 5 miles to a field hospital, never asked for anything in return, just said, 'Sometimes you're the one who needs help, and sometimes you're the one who gives it.'" He shrugged. "Reckon it's my turn to give." Emma set down the apple core. "He's going to come for me. Uncle Jasper. He always finds me." "Let him come." "You don't understand. He has money, power. The sheriff does whatever he says. The judge too. Last time I ran, Sheriff Dixon dragged me back himself. Said I was a runaway ward and Uncle Jasper had every legal right to discipline me however he saw fit." "Discipline." Caleb's voice went hard. "That what he calls it teaching me my place." Emma pulled her knees to her chest, making herself small. He says I'm willful like my mother. Says she put ideas in my head about being something I'm not. Says he's going to beat the stubborn out of me if it takes 100 years. How long you been living with him? 4 months. Since September. 4 months of beatings. 4 months of starvation. 4 months of a child trying to survive a monster while the whole town looked the other way. Why'd you come here? Caleb asked. This cabin, I mean. It's a long walk from anywhere. Emma was quiet for a moment. Papa used to talk about you. Said you saved his life once in a mine collapse. Said you were the only man in the territory he'd trust with his own blood. She met his eyes. He wrote it down in his will. I saw it before Uncle Jasper burned it. If anything happened to him and Mama, I was supposed to come to you. Caleb felt the air leave his lungs. Your father named me guardian. In his real will, the one Uncle Jasper burned, he made a fake one that names himself. That's what he showed the judge. That's why everyone believes him. Tears slipped down Emma's cheeks. But Papa wanted me with you. He said you were a good man. Said you'd know what to do. A good man. Caleb hadn't felt like a good man in 8 years. Good men didn't let their families die while they were out chasing medicine through a blizzard. Good men didn't hide in the mountains pretending the world didn't exist. Good men didn't stop living just because living hurt too much. But this child was looking at him like he could save her. Like he was her only chance. Your uncle, Caleb said slowly. He know your papa wrote a real will. I don't think so. Papa kept it hidden. With the minister. Reverend Brooks at the Methodist Church. But Uncle Jasper's been trying to get Reverend Brooks to leave town. Threatening him, I think. The Reverend's the only one who doesn't do what Uncle Jasper says. What about the other town folk? They're scared. Emma wiped her face with her sleeve. Or bought. Uncle Jasper's been buying land all over the territory. Every time someone has an accident, he shows up with money, offers to take the burden off their hands. People don't ask questions because they don't want answers. Caleb stood and walked to the window. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world of white and silence. The sun was just cresting the mountains, painting the snow pink and gold. Somewhere out there, a man was looking for this child. A man who'd killed her parents, beat her bloody, planned to do worse. And Caleb Thornton had 2 choices. He could send her away, put her on a horse pointed toward the territorial capital, and tell her to find a marshal who wasn't bought, wash his hands of the whole mess and go back to his silent cabin and his unfinished wagon and his carefully constructed nothing. Or he could do what Thomas Hartwell had trusted him to do. He could fight. Emma. He turned from the window. I'm going to ask you something, and I need the truth. Yes, sir. If I help you, if I stand against your uncle, it's going to get ugly. He's going to come at me with everything he's got. The law, money, maybe guns. People could get hurt. I could lose this cabin, this land, everything I've built. He crouched down to her level. Are you worth that? Emma's chin came up. A spark of something fierce in those green eyes. My mama was worth it. My papa was worth it. They died trying to give me a good life. They died because Uncle Jasper wanted what was theirs, and they wouldn't give it to him. Her voice shook, but didn't break. I'm their daughter. If I'm not worth fighting for, then what was the point of them dying at all? Caleb felt the corner of his mouth twitch. Almost a smile. You got your mother's fire. You knew her? Met her once. At your parents' wedding. I was just passing through, signed as a witness because they needed one. He stood. She looked at your father the way you're looking at me right now, like she expected him to move mountains. Did he? He married her, didn't he? Built that ranch from nothing. Gave you 10 years of love before your uncle took it away. Caleb grabbed his coat from the hook by the door. Reckon he moved a few mountains in his time. Where are you going? Nowhere yet. But when that storm cleared, it opened the roads. Your uncle will be coming soon as he figures out where you went. We need to be ready. Ready how? Caleb checked the rifle. Loaded. Safety on. He set it by the door within easy reach. First, we're going to town. Talk to Reverend Brooks. Find that will." He looked at Emma. "Then we're going to show your uncle what happens when he picks a fight with the wrong man." The sound of hoofbeats stopped him cold, distant but getting closer. 2 horses, maybe 3, pushing hard through the fresh snow. Emma's face went white. "He found me." "Get in the cellar." Caleb pointed to the trapdoor in the floor. "Don't come out till I say." "But now, Emma!" She scrambled across the room, yanked the trapdoor open, and disappeared into the dark below. Caleb slid the rug over the door and grabbed his rifle. He stepped onto the porch just as the riders came into view. 3 of them. Sheriff Walter Dixon in front star catching the morning light. Behind him, a thin man in a black coat with a silver ring glinting on his finger. And a third man Caleb didn't recognize, thick-necked and mean-looking, with the stance of hired muscle. They stopped 20 yards from the cabin. "Caleb Thornton." The thin man spoke first, his voice smooth as oil on water. "We haven't met. I'm Jasper Hartwell." "I know who you are." "Then you know why I'm here." "My niece ran off last night. Poor child's been troubled since her parents died. Creates stories, runs away, makes accusations." He spread his hands in a gesture of helplessness. "I'm just trying to give her a good home." "That's so." "It is. And Sheriff Dixon here can confirm that I have legal guardianship, signed by Judge Wade himself." Jasper smiled, but his eyes stayed cold. "So if you've seen her, I'd appreciate you telling me. I'm worried sick." "She's not here." "You're certain?" Jasper's eyes moved to the cabin behind Caleb. "You wouldn't mind if we checked, just to set my mind at ease." "I would mind." Sheriff Dixon shifted in his saddle. "Now, Caleb, let's not make this difficult. Mr. Hartwell has legal papers. If the girl's not here, we'll look around and leave. Simple as that." "She's not here," Caleb repeated. "And you're not coming in." The third man's hand moved toward his holster. Caleb's rifle came up smooth and fast, leveled at the man's chest before he could blink. "I wouldn't." The man froze. Jasper's smile thinned. "Mr. Thornton, I understand you've been living alone up here for quite some time. Perhaps you've forgotten how things work in civilization. When a legal guardian comes looking for his ward aided by the law, it's customary to cooperate. I've forgotten a lot of things. Manners mostly. Social graces." Caleb didn't lower the rifle. "But I remember what a beating looks like. Remember what a scared child sounds like. And I remember that the law and justice ain't always the same thing." "Are you accusing me of something?" "Not yet, just making an observation." Jasper stared at him for a long moment. Something ugly flickered behind his eyes, then disappeared behind the smooth mask. "Sheriff, I believe Mr. Thornton is obstructing your duties." Dixon looked uncomfortable. "Caleb, I'm going to need you to put the rifle down. We're just here to talk." "We've talked. I said she's not here. You can take my word, or you can test it." Caleb's finger rested easy on the trigger. "Your choice." The wind picked up swirling snow between them. Nobody moved. Finally, Jasper pulled on his reins, turning his horse. "Very well, Mr. Thornton. We'll leave. For now." He looked back over his shoulder. "But I should mention I have connections in this territory. Land commissioners, railroad men, territorial judges. If I were to suggest that you're harboring a runaway ward interfering with legal custody, well, things could become uncomfortable for you." "I've been uncomfortable before." "Not like this." Jasper's smile returned colder than the air. "I own half the mortgages in Silver Creek. I have friends in Helena and Washington. I can make a man's life very difficult, or I can make it very easy. It all depends on cooperation." Caleb said nothing. 10 days, Jasper continued. "That's how long Sheriff Dixon is legally required to wait before executing a recovery order for my niece. If she turns up in that time returned to my custody safe and sound, we can forget this whole unpleasant business ever happened. If not..." He shrugged elegantly. Well, I'm sure you can imagine. He turned and rode away. The hired man followed, throwing a dark look back at Caleb. Sheriff Dixon lingered a moment longer. Caleb. His voice was low, meant for just the two of them. I've known you 20 years. You're a good man. But this isn't a fight you can win. Hartwell's got money, power, legal standing. You've got a cabin and a rifle. I've got something else too. What's that? Caleb thought of the child hiding in his cellar, of the will that might still exist, of the promise he'd never made to a dead man but was going to keep anyway. I've got a reason to fight. Dixon shook his head slowly, turned his horse, rode away. Caleb waited until they were out of sight before lowering the rifle. His hands were steady. They always were. But inside something had shifted. Something that had been sleeping for 8 years was waking up, stretching, remembering what it felt like to care about something. He went back inside and pulled the rug away from the cellar door. They're gone. Emma emerged slowly, dust on her dress and fear in her eyes. He'll be back. I know. He always gets what he wants. Not this time. She looked at him, wanting to believe, afraid to hope. How can you be sure? Caleb thought about the question. About Anna and Samuel, and all the things he'd lost. About the unfinished wagon in the corner, and the empty years behind him, and the uncertain road ahead. Because I made a choice, he said finally. When I opened that door last night and saw you falling, I could have turned away. Should have, maybe. Would have been easier. Safer. Why didn't you? He picked up the small wooden wagon from his workbench, ran his fingers over the half-carved wheels, the unfinished axles, the careful joinery he'd abandoned 8 years ago. I was making this for my son, Samuel. He died before I could give it to him. His voice was rough. For 8 years, I couldn't finish it, couldn't let go, couldn't move forward. Emma watched him, saying nothing. But then you showed up, bleeding and scared and needing someone to help you. And I thought... He set the wagon down carefully. I thought maybe this is why. Maybe I went through all that pain so I'd be here, right now, when you needed someone. You think God sent me to you? I think sometimes broken people find each other. He looked at her. And I think your father was right to trust me. I'm not going to let you down, Emma. Whatever comes, we face it together. She moved across the room, slow at first, then faster, threw her arms around his waist, and held on like he was the only solid thing in a spinning world. Caleb froze. 8 years since anyone had touched him. 8 years since he'd allowed himself to be touched. Then slowly his hands came down, settled on her shoulders, held her while she cried the tears she'd been too scared to cry for 4 months. I've got you, he said. I've got you, little one. Outside, the sun climbed higher over Silver Creek. 10 days until Jasper Hartwell came back with the law behind him. 10 days to find a will, gather allies, and prepare for a fight that would decide everything. 10 days. It would have to be enough. They left for town before noon. Emma rode behind Caleb on his gray mare, her small hands gripping his coat, her body tense against his back. She'd borrowed one of his old shirts, the sleeves rolled up 6 times, and wrapped her damaged feet in strips of wool he'd cut from a blanket. "You're sure about this?" she asked as the cabin disappeared behind them. "No. That's not reassuring. Wasn't meant to be." Caleb guided the horse down the mountain trail, picking through snowdrifts that reached the mare's belly in places. "Truth is, I don't know what we're walking into. Could be Reverend Brooks has the will and everything works out. Could be your uncle got to him already. Could be we're riding straight into a trap. Then why are we going? Because sitting still is the same as giving up. And I don't give up." Emma was quiet for a moment. "My papa used to say that. Exact same words. Smart man, your papa." "He was." Her voice caught. "I miss him. Every day." Caleb didn't answer. Some pain was too big for words. They reached Silver Creek just past 2 o'clock. The town spread along the frozen creek, maybe 40 buildings in all. General store, saloon, livery stable, sheriff's office with smoke curling from the chimney. And at the far end of the main street, the white steeple of the Methodist church. People stopped and stared as they rode in. Caleb felt their eyes, heard the whispers starting. He hadn't been to town in 3 months, maybe 4. His appearance alone was news. But riding in with a child on his saddle, a child everyone knew had run away from Jasper Hartwell. That was something else entirely. "Mr. Thornton." He reined up. Clara Whitfield stood on the porch of the telegraph office, a shawl wrapped tight around her shoulders. She was a handsome woman, mid-30s, with gray eyes that missed nothing, and a reputation for speaking her mind even when speaking her mind wasn't wise. "Mrs. Whitfield, that's the Hartwell girl behind you." "It is." "Jasper's been telling everyone she ran off, said she's troubled, said anyone who helps her is breaking the law." "What do you say?" Clara's eyes moved to Emma, took in the bruises still visible on her jaw, the way she held herself like something hurt. "I say a child doesn't run 3 miles through a blizzard in bare feet unless she's running from something worse than cold." She stepped down from the porch. "I say Jasper Hartwell's been buying up land in this territory for 3 years, and every time he does, somebody has an accident first. I say my husband died in a mine explosion that the company called an accident, and 2 weeks later Jasper bought the mining rights for pennies." Caleb's jaw tightened. "You think he killed your husband?" "I think I can't prove it. Same as I can't prove what happened to the Hartwell's wagon, or the Chen's store, or Henry Holloway's horses." Clara's voice was steady, but her hands shook. "But I think. And I remember. And I've been waiting for someone else to start asking questions. I'm asking." "Then you'd better come inside, both of you." The telegraph office was small and warm, a pot-bellied stove glowing in the corner. Clara closed the door and pulled the curtains. "Jasper's got eyes everywhere. The Grady brothers do odd jobs for him, report back on who talks to who. If they see you in here too long, word will get back." "Let it." Caleb helped Emma into a chair by the stove. "We're looking for Reverend Brooks. Emma says her father left a will with him." Clara's expression changed. "The real will? You know about it?" "I know Thomas Hartwell was scared of his brother. Came to me last summer, asked if I could send a telegram to the territorial capital without anyone knowing. Wanted to register some documents with the land office, directly bypass the local courts." She paused. "I told him the line had been having problems. Strange problems. Messages not getting through or getting through wrong. Someone's tampering with it. Someone cut it. About 2 miles east of here, right where it crosses Hartwell land." Clara pulled a piece of copper wire from her desk drawer. "I found this last month when I rode out to check. Clean cut. Tool marks." Emma leaned forward. "Uncle Jasper carries surveyor's tools. I've seen them." "I know." Clara set the wire down. "I also know that if I accuse a man like Jasper Hartwell of cutting telegraph lines without solid proof, I'll be the one who ends up in trouble. Asian woman running a business alone, I'm already suspicious in most people's eyes." "Then help us get proof." Clara looked at him for a long moment. "What exactly are you proposing, Mr. Thornton?" "First, we find the will. If it names me as Emma's guardian, Jasper's claim falls apart. Second, we get that telegraph line fixed. Send a message to the territorial clerk's office. Verify whether Judge Wade really signed those guardianship papers. If they're forged, Jasper's looking at fraud charges. And if the will's gone, if Jasper already got to it, then we find another way." Clara laughed short and sharp. "You make it sound simple." "It ain't, but neither is letting a child go back to a man who beats her." Emma spoke up, then her voice small but steady. "Mrs. Whitfield, do you have children?" Clara's face softened. "I did. A daughter. She died with my husband in the explosion. She was 8. "I'm sorry." So am I. Clara crouched down to Emma's level. Every day I'm sorry, and every day I wonder what I would have done to protect her if I'd known what was coming. Would you have fought? I would have burned the world down. Emma nodded like that was the answer she'd expected. Then help us. Please, help us burn it down. Something passed between them. Woman to child, survivor to survivor, Clara stood. The Reverend's at the church. He doesn't leave much anymore, not since Jasper started pressuring him. I'll take you there, but we go the back way through the alley behind the saloon. Less eyes. They moved through Silver Creek like ghosts sticking to shadows and back paths. Emma limped on her bandaged feet, but she didn't complain. Caleb noticed that about her. The way she pushed through pain without asking for help, without expecting comfort. Like she'd learned early that comfort wasn't coming. The church was empty when they arrived. Rows of wooden pews, a simple altar, weak winter light filtering through plain glass windows. "Reverend Brooks!" Clara called out. A door opened at the back and an old man emerged. 62 years old, white-haired, with the stooped shoulders of someone carrying weight that wasn't physical. "Clara." His eyes moved to Caleb, then to Emma, and something shifted in his face. "Emma Grace, thank God." He crossed the church faster than his age should have allowed, pulling Emma into an embrace. "I've been praying you'd find your way here. Praying every night since your parents died." "You knew." Emma's voice was muffled against his chest. "You knew I was in trouble." "I knew your uncle was a serpent. Known it since he was a boy." The Reverend pulled back, holding her at arm's length, taking in the bruises. "I tried to help. Wrote letters to the territorial authorities, tried to get word to the marshal's office. But my letters never arrived. My telegrams never went through." Clara nodded grimly. "The line. And when I confronted Jasper directly, he reminded me that churches can burn as easily as barns." The Reverend's voice was bitter. "He's not subtle about his threats." Caleb stepped forward. "The will. Emma says her father left one with you. A real one." Reverend Brooks looked at him. "You're Caleb Thornton. I remember you from the wedding. Thomas talked about you afterward. Said you were the only man he'd trust with his daughter if something happened." "Something happened." "Yes, it did." The Reverend moved to the altar, knelt down, and pressed a hidden catch. A panel swung open, revealing a small compartment. He pulled out a folded document. "I've been keeping this since Thomas gave it to me 2 years ago, waiting for the right moment." He handed it to Caleb. The paper was old, but well preserved. Legal script clear and formal. Last will and testament of Thomas Andrew Hartwell. Caleb's eyes found the relevant passage. "In the event of our deaths, we appoint Caleb Thornton of Silver Creek as guardian of our daughter, Emma Grace Hartwell. We further appoint him executor of all property and assets associated with the Hartwell Homestead Section 14 to be held in trust until Emma reaches the age of majority." Below that, 2 witness signatures, Reverend Samuel Brooks, and another name Caleb didn't recognize. "This is dated 2 years ago," he said, "before Jasper even arrived in the territory." The Reverend nodded. "Thomas was careful. He knew his brother's nature." "Why didn't you come forward with this when the Hartwells died?" "I tried." The old man's face twisted with shame. "I went to Judge Wade with the will the week after the funeral. He looked at it, looked at me, and told me it was clearly a forgery. Said he'd already seen the real will, the one naming Jasper as guardian. Said if I persisted in spreading lies, he'd have me arrested for fraud." "So you backed down." "I'm 62 years old, Mr. Thornton. I have no family, no money, no power. Going against a man like Jasper and a judge he's bought." The Reverend shook his head. "I told myself I was being wise, biding my time, waiting for God to provide an opportunity. And while you waited, Emma got beaten half to death." The words hung in the air, harsh and true. The Reverend's eyes filled with tears. I know what I am, a coward who let a child suffer because I was afraid." He looked at Emma. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Emma reached out and took his hand. It's okay, Reverend. You're helping now. It's not okay. It will never be okay. But he squeezed her hand gratefully. What do you need from me? Caleb folded the will carefully. I need you to testify. When the time comes when we have enough evidence to challenge Jasper in front of the whole town, I need you to stand up and tell them what you know. They won't believe me. Judge Wade will call me a liar. Jasper will do what Jasper does. But he can't silence everyone. Caleb looked at Clara. The telegraph line. Can you fix it? I can. It's a 2-day job if the weather holds. Then start tonight. We need to get a message to the territorial clerk's office. If Judge Wade's signature on those guardianship papers is forged, we can prove Jasper committed fraud. And if it's not forged, if Wade really did sign them, then Wade's an accomplice. Either way, we've got something to work with. Clara nodded slowly. I'll ride out after dark. The line's on Hartwell property, but with the snow, it'll be hard for anyone to spot me. Be careful. I've been careful my whole life, Mr. Thornton. Look where it's gotten me. She smiled without humor. Maybe it's time to try something else. They left the church separately. Clara went first back to the telegraph office. Reverend Brooks retreated to his quarters with the promise that he'd be ready when called upon. Caleb and Emma slipped out the back, moving through the alleys toward where they'd left the horse. They were almost there when a voice stopped them. Mr. Thornton. Sheriff Walter Dixon stepped out of a doorway, hands raised to show he wasn't reaching for his gun. Sheriff? I'm not here to arrest you, not yet. Dixon looked around nervously. I'm here to talk. So talk. Not here. Too many eyes. He gestured toward the livery stable. Henry Holloway's gone for the day. We can use his office. Caleb hesitated. Every instinct said it was a trap. But something in Dixon's face, a weariness that went deeper than exhaustion, made him reconsider. Emma stays with me. Fine. Just come on. Please. The livery stable smelled of hay and horses and old leather. Dixon led them to a small office in the back, shut the door, and turned to face them. I've been sheriff of Silver Creek for 15 years. In that time, I've done things I'm not proud of. Looked the other way when I shouldn't have. Followed orders when I should have asked questions. Is this a confession? It's an explanation. Dixon sat heavily on a barrel. When Jasper Hartwell came to this territory, he came with money and connections. Bought up mortgages, made loans, got friendly with Judge Wade. Within a year, half the town owed him something. Within 2 years, he owned the judge outright. And you? Dixon's jaw worked. I've got a wife, 3 kids, a mortgage on my house that Hartwell holds. He made it clear early on what would happen if I didn't cooperate. My family would be on the street. Or worse. So you've been doing his bidding. I've been surviving, same as everyone else in this town. Dixon looked at Emma. I knew something was wrong when I brought you back to him last time. Saw the way you flinched when he touched you. Heard you crying that night from the jail cell where he locked you. You knew and you did nothing. I did nothing visible. But I've been keeping records. Every suspicious accident. Every property transfer. Every time Jasper's name came up in connection with something that didn't smell right. He pulled a small leather journal from inside his coat. It's all here. 3 years of notes. Caleb took the journal, flipped through the pages. Names, dates, amounts. A paper trail of corruption. Why are you showing me this now? Because you're the first person who stood up to him. The first person who looked him in the eye and didn't blink. Dixon's voice cracked. And because I'm tired of being afraid. Tired of pretending I don't see what's right in front of me. You could have gone to the territorial marshal. I tried, twice. Both times my letters were intercepted. Jasper has people in the postal office too. Dixon stood. but a direct message through a fixed telegraph line that might actually get through. Clara's fixing the line tonight. I know, she told me. Dixon met Caleb's eyes. I'm done being Jasper's puppet, Thornton. Tell me what you need me to do. Caleb studied him for a long moment. The sheriff looked 10 years older than he probably was, worn down by years of compromise and fear. But there was something in his eyes now, a spark of the man he might have been before Jasper Hartwell came to town. When the time comes, I'm going to need you to arrest him. On what charges? Fraud for starters, murder if we can prove it. Caleb held up the journal. This is a start. Combined with the forged guardianship papers and the will, we might have enough for a territorial court to take seriously. Might? Might is better than nothing. Dixon nodded slowly. I'll need evidence I can show publicly. Something that can't be dismissed as rumor or forgery. The telegram. When Clara gets the line fixed, we ask the territorial clerk's office to verify Judge Wade's signature. If they confirm it's a fake, that's proof of fraud. And if they confirm it's real, then we've got a corrupt judge to deal with on top of everything else. But we cross that bridge when we come to it. Emma, who had been silent through the exchange, spoke up. Sheriff Dixon. Yes, Miss Emma. Why did you bring me back to Uncle Jasper last time you saw me? You knew. Dixon's face crumpled. I told myself you'd be okay. Told myself he was your kin, that family disputes weren't my business, that the law said he had a right to discipline his ward. He swallowed hard. I told myself a lot of lies. I screamed when you handed me over. I begged you not to leave me with him. I know. I hear it every night when I close my eyes. Then make it right. Emma's voice was steady. Not for me. For the next child. The next person Jasper decides to hurt. Make sure there isn't one. Dixon nodded. I will. I swear on my children's lives I will. They left the livery stable as the sun was setting. The temperature was dropping again, the promise of another bitter night. Caleb lifted Emma onto the horse and mounted behind her. Back to the cabin. Back to the cabin. They rode in silence for a while. The town fell away behind them, the lights of Silver Creek fading to dim glows against the darkening sky. You trust him? Emma asked finally. The sheriff. I trust that he's afraid of Jasper, and I trust that he's more afraid of what he's becoming than what Jasper might do to him. Caleb guided the horse around a deep drift. Fear can make men cowards, but it can also make them brave when they finally get scared enough of the wrong thing. What about Clara and Reverend Brooks? Clara's got her own reasons to want Jasper brought down. Her husband, her daughter. That kind of grief doesn't go away, just finds different shapes. Right now, it's shaped like a telegraph line that needs fixing. And the Reverend, he's got guilt, almost as powerful as grief. Emma was quiet for a moment. What about you? What do you have? Caleb thought about the question. About Anna and Samuel and 8 years of emptiness. About the unfinished wagon and the unopened rooms and the silence he'd wrapped around himself like armor. I have a promise to keep. To your father. Is that all? He looked down at the small head resting against his chest. The red-brown hair that caught the last light of the sun. The thin shoulders that had borne more weight than any child should carry. No, he said quietly. That's not all. They reached the cabin as the stars were coming out. Caleb carried Emma inside. Her energy finally spent, her eyes already closing. He laid her on the bed and pulled the quilt up to her chin. Thank you, she murmured. For today. Rest now. Tomorrow we plan our next move. You really think we can win? Caleb looked at the will still folded in his pocket, at the sheriff's journal on the table, at the small battered child who had walked through a blizzard to find him. I think your father was right about one thing. What's that? He said I'd know what to do. Caleb moved to the door, checked the lock, checked the window. Turns out I do. Emma smiled sleepily. What is it? Fight. Whatever it takes, however long it takes. We fight." He sat in the chair by the fire rifle across his knees and watched the flames dance. Somewhere out there, Clara Whitfield was riding through the snow toward a severed telegraph line. Sheriff Dixon was staring at his reflection and wondering if he'd have the courage to follow through. Reverend Brooks was praying for forgiveness he didn't deserve, and Jasper Hartwell was counting down the days until he could legally take back his property. 9 days left. The fire crackled. Emma's breathing slowed into sleep, and Caleb Thornton sat in the darkness, planning a war. Around midnight, a knock came at the door. Caleb was on his feet instantly, rifle up, moving silent across the floor. Emma stirred but didn't wake. "Who's there?" "It's Martha Dixon, the sheriff's wife." A woman's voice thin with cold. "Please, Mr. Thornton, I need to help." He cracked the door. Martha Dixon stood in the snow wrapped in a heavy coat, her breath pluming white. Behind her, the darkness was empty. "My husband told me what happened today. Told me what you're planning." She stepped inside quickly, and Caleb shut the door against the cold. "I want in." "Does your husband know you're here?" "He knows. He's watching the road, making sure I wasn't followed." Martha's eyes moved to the bed where Emma slept. "That child came to my house once, 2 months ago, knocked on my door in the middle of the night begging for food. I gave her bread and sent her away because I was afraid of what Jasper would do if he found out." "You sent her back?" "To my eternal shame." Martha's voice cracked. "But I'm here now, and I'm telling you that half the women in this town feel the same way I do. We've seen how Jasper treats that girl. We've heard her crying. We've looked away because our husbands told us to, because the law told us to, because we didn't know what else to do. What changed? You did." Martha looked at him with something like hope. "You stood up, you said no, and now we're wondering why we didn't do the same. What can you do? Talk. Listen. Gather information." Martha pulled a folded paper from her coat. "Jasper's having a meeting tomorrow night at the land office. All his people. The Grady brothers, Judge Wade, a man from the railroad company. I clean the land office on Tuesdays. I can tell you what they're planning." Caleb took the paper. It was a schedule, times and dates and names. "This is dangerous for you. Everything's dangerous now. Has been for years, we just pretended otherwise." Martha looked at Emma again. "My daughters are 12 and 14. Every time I see that girl, I think about what I'd want someone to do if it were my children. What I'd want someone to risk." "And what's that?" "Everything." Martha moved to the door. "I should go. Walter will be worried. But Mr. Thornton, I want you to know something. Jasper thinks he controls this town, thinks he's bought and threatened everyone into submission. But he's wrong. There are good people here. Scared people, yes, but good. They just need someone to show them it's okay to fight back." "And you think I'm that someone?" "I think you're the first person in 3 years who's given us a reason to hope." She opened the door, letting in a rush of cold air. "Don't waste it." Then she was gone, swallowed by the darkness. Caleb stood at the window watching her shadow merge with the night. First Clara, then the Reverend, then the sheriff. Now Martha Dixon, and whatever network of women she represented. It wasn't an army. It wasn't even close. But it was something. A foundation. A beginning. He looked at the sleeping child in his bed, at the journal of crimes on his table, at the will that could change everything. 9 days. It would have to be enough. Clara returned on the 3rd day, her face raw from cold and her hands wrapped in bloody bandages. Caleb met her at the door before she could knock. He'd been watching the trail since dawn, unable to sleep, unable to sit still. Emma stood behind him, her small face tight with worry. "It's done." Clara swayed on her feet, exhaustion pulling at her. "The line's fixed. Sent the message to the territorial clerk's office last night. You're hurt. Wire cut my hands. Doesn't matter." She pushed past him into the cabin, collapsed into the chair by the fire. What matters is the message went through. I stayed at the relay station in Miller's Crossing until I got confirmation. Helena received it. How long until we get a response? 2 days, maybe 3. Clara accepted the cup of water Emma brought her. I asked them to verify Judge Wade's signature against their records. Told them it was urgent. A child's safety depends on it. Emma knelt beside her chair. Thank you, Mrs. Whitfield, for risking yourself. Don't thank me yet. Clara's gray eyes were serious. Jasper knows something's happening. When I rode back through town, the Grady brothers were watching the telegraph office. They saw me come in. They know you fixed the line. They know I was out all night and came back looking like I'd been in a fight with a bobcat. Clara flexed her bandaged hands. It won't take them long to figure out the rest. Caleb moved to the window, scanning the tree line. Then we need to move faster. What about Martha Dixon? Did she get the information from Jasper's meeting? She did. Clara pulled a folded paper from inside her coat. But it's worse than we thought. Caleb took the paper. Read it once. Read it again. He's bringing in men. 5 of them. Arriving on Friday's stage. Hired guns, Clara confirmed. From what Martha could hear, Jasper's done playing nice. He's going to take Emma by force if he has to. Make it look like you resisted arrest. And me. Dead. That's the plan. Kill you, take Emma, claim you drew on the sheriff and had to be put down. Clara's voice was flat, matter-of-fact. By the time anyone asks questions, you'll be buried, and Emma will be back under his roof. Emma's hand found Caleb's. She was trembling, but her voice was steady. He won't stop. No matter what we do, he won't stop. Then we stop him first. Clara looked up. How? We've got a will that a corrupt judge already called a forgery. We've got a sheriff who might or might not hold his nerve when the moment comes. We've got a telegram that may or may not prove fraud. And now we've got 5 hired killers coming to town in 4 days. We've got more than that. Caleb folded the paper carefully. We've got the truth, and we've got people who are tired of being afraid. Truth doesn't stop bullets, Thornton. No, but it can stop a town from looking the other way while a man gets murdered. He crossed to the table where he'd spread out the sheriff's journal, the will, and the notes Martha had gathered. 3 years of Jasper Hartwell's crimes laid out in ink and paper. We're not going to wait for Jasper to come to us. We're going to call a town meeting. Public. Open. Everyone who's been hurt by him, everyone who's looked away, everyone who knows the truth, but hasn't had the courage to speak it. Jasper will never allow that. Jasper doesn't get to decide. Caleb looked at Clara. Can you get word to the women Martha mentioned? The ones who want to help. I can. Tell them to spread the word. Tomorrow night at the church. Reverend Brooks presiding. Everyone who has a grievance against Jasper Hartwell is invited to speak. Clara was shaking her head. He'll shut it down. Send the sheriff claim it's an illegal gathering. The sheriff will be there. On our side. You're betting a lot on Walter Dixon's courage. I'm betting on his guilt. Caleb's voice was hard. He's been carrying it for years. Watching a child get beaten. Watching families lose everything. Knowing he could have stopped it and didn't. That kind of guilt eats a man alive. Right now, he'd rather die standing up than live another day on his knees. Emma spoke quietly. What about Judge Wade? He's Jasper's man. Judge Wade is a coward who signed papers for money. When he sees the whole town turning against his meal ticket, he'll fold. Caleb knelt beside her. But I need you to do something, Emma. Something hard. What? I need you to stand up in front of everyone and tell them what your uncle did to you. Show them the scars. Let them see what Jasper Hartwell really is. Emma's face went pale. In front of everyone. I know it's asking a lot. I know it means reliving things you'd rather forget. But your voice is the most powerful weapon we have. No one can call you a liar when they see the belt marks on your back. She was quiet for the long moment. Clara watched her with something like admiration. My mama used to say that silence is what evil counts on. Emma's voice was small but growing stronger. She said the only way to beat darkness is to drag it into the light. Your mama was a wise woman. She was. Emma squared her shoulders. I'll do it. I'll tell them everything. Caleb pulled her into a rough embrace. Brave girl. Braver than most men I've known. Clara stood steadier now. I'll get word to the others. Tomorrow night the church. But Thornton, you need to understand something. If this fails, if Jasper manages to shut it down, or turn the crowd against you, there won't be a second chance. I know. And those hired guns arrive in 4 days. Even if the meeting works, even if the town sides with you, 5 armed men don't care about public opinion. Then we'd better make sure the town is ready to stand with us when they come. Clara moved to the door, paused with her hand on the latch. James would have liked you. Your husband. He was like you, stubborn, righteous, convinced that doing the right thing would be enough. Her voice caught. It wasn't enough for him. Jasper killed him anyway. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Win. She opened the door. For James, for my daughter, for all of us. Then she was gone, riding hard toward town. The next morning, Sheriff Dixon appeared at the cabin. He came alone, his horse lathered, his face drawn with exhaustion. It's starting, he said before Caleb could speak. Jasper knows about the meeting. He's furious. Spent all last night at the saloon buying drinks, talking loud about how you've corrupted his niece, how you're turning the town against him with lies. Is it working? For some. The men who owe him money, the ones who work his land. They're scared of what happens if he falls. But the others. Dixon almost smiled. Martha says women have been talking all night, sharing stories. Things Jasper did that they never told anyone. The merchant's wife, she said Jasper threatened to burn their store if they gave Emma food. The schoolteacher, she said he tried to force himself on her last spring. And they're willing to speak publicly. Some are, not all, but enough. Dixon pulled an envelope from his coat. This came through on the telegraph this morning. Clara asked me to bring it straight to you. Caleb's hands were steady as he opened the envelope. Read the words that would decide everything. What does it say? Emma appeared at his elbow, unable to wait. Territorial Clerk's Office, Helena. Caleb read aloud. Signature analysis complete. Signature on guardianship document dated September 15, 1884, does not match official signature of Judge Cornelius Wade on file. Document appears to be a forgery. Federal investigation recommended. Warrant for fraud to be issued upon formal complaint. Emma let out a breath she'd been holding for months. It's fake. Uncle Jasper's papers are fake. They are. Caleb handed the telegram to Dixon. This goes to Judge Wade, today. Let him know that his signature's been forged and the federal government is asking questions. He'll run. Let him. One less problem to deal with. Dixon hesitated. There's something else. The hired guns Jasper sent for. They're not coming on Friday's stage. When? Tomorrow. Jasper changed the arrangement, paid extra for speed. Dixon's face was grim. They'll be here by nightfall tomorrow, before the town meeting. Caleb felt the ground shift beneath him. Everything they'd planned depended on getting the town on their side before violence became an option. Now violence was coming first. Can you delay them? Hold them at the sheriff's office for questioning. On what grounds they haven't done anything yet. Then we move the meeting up, tonight. Tonight? That's not enough time. Martha's still spreading the word. Half the people don't even know about it yet. Then we work with who we have. Caleb grabbed his coat. Emma, stay here. Bar the door. Don't open it for anyone except me or Clara. Where are you going? To town, to make sure there's still a town left to fight for when this is over. He rode hard, pushing the gray mare faster than was safe on the icy trails. Silver Creek appeared through the pines just as the sun reached its peak, the white steeple of the church rising above the other buildings like a beacon. He went to the church first. Reverend Brooks was waiting. The old man looked like he hadn't slept. His eyes red-rimmed, his hands shaking as he clasped Caleb's. "I heard about the meeting, tonight instead of tomorrow." Word travels fast. Fear travels faster. The Reverend led him inside. "Jasper's been making threats. Anyone who attends the meeting will lose their mortgage, their credit, their livelihood. He's got men watching the roads taking names. And people are still coming." "Some." The Reverend's voice was heavy with doubt. "Clara's spreading the word. Martha too. But Caleb, you have to understand. These people have spent years under Jasper's thumb. They've learned that standing up means getting knocked down." "Then we teach them something different." The church doors opened, and Clara entered with Martha Dixon behind her. Both women looked exhausted but determined. "We've got 20 families committed," Clara reported. "Maybe more. The Chens, the Holloways, the Bradshaw clan from out near Miller's Crossing. And the women, the ones I told you about, they're coming too. 20 families against Jasper Hartwell. 20 families and the truth." Martha stepped forward. "I told Walter what's happening. He's ready. When Jasper tries to shut down the meeting, Walter will stand with you. And if Jasper brings his own men, he will." Clara's voice was flat. "The Grady brothers for sure. Maybe some of the ranch hands who owe him. Could be 10, 12 men willing to fight for him. Then we need more. We have what we have." Caleb looked around the church, at the simple pews, the plain altar, the weak light filtering through windows. This was where they would make their stand. This was where the truth would either set them free or get them killed. "Tonight," he said. 7 o'clock. Everyone who's willing to speak against Jasper gets their chance. And when it's over, when the whole town knows what he's done, we present the evidence. The will, the telegram, the sheriff's journal, everything. And if it's not enough, then we fight, whatever it takes. The afternoon passed in a blur of preparation. Clara and Martha organized the women. Reverend Brooks prepared the church. Sheriff Dixon positioned himself at the edge of town, watching for Jasper's response. Caleb rode back to the cabin to get Emma. She was waiting on the porch when he arrived, the rifle clutched in her small hands. "I heard horses, earlier. 2 men riding past. The Grady brothers. Jasper's got them watching the trails." Caleb dismounted. "Are you ready?" "No." Emma set down the rifle. "But I'm going anyway." He helped her onto the horse, and they rode toward town together, the setting sun painting the snow in shades of orange and red. The temperature was dropping again, the promise of another bitter night. "Are you scared?" Emma asked. "Yes." "Really?" "Only a fool isn't scared before a fight." Caleb guided the horse around a frozen drift. Courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about being afraid and doing what needs doing anyway. "My papa said something like that once." "Your papa was a smart man." "He was scared of Uncle Jasper. I could tell even though he tried to hide it." Emma's voice went soft. "Do you think he knew what was going to happen with the wagon?" "I think he knew his brother was dangerous. That's why he wrote that will. That's why he left it with the Reverend instead of filing it with the court. So he was preparing. In case." "In case." Caleb reached back and squeezed her shoulder. "He was protecting you the only way he knew how. And now we're going to finish what he started." The church was already filling when they arrived. 20 families, Clara had said. It looked like more. Farmers and merchants and miners, their wives and children packed into the pews with faces that ranged from hopeful to terrified. Reverend Brooks stood at the altar, his hands folded, his expression grave. Clara met Caleb at the door. "Jasper knows. He's gathering his men at the land office. The Grady brothers, 6 ranch hands, Judge Wade." She paused. "He's coming here, to shut us down." "Let him come." "Caleb, this is what we wanted, Clara. This is what we planned for. Let him come and let the whole town see what he really is." Sheriff Dixon appeared at his elbow. "They're moving, maybe 15 minutes out. Is everyone here?" "Everyone who's coming." Caleb walked to the front of the church, Emma beside him. The crowd fell silent as he turned to face them. "Thank you for coming. I know what it cost you. I know the threats Jasper Hartwell made. I know you're scared." A murmur ran through the crowd. "I'm scared too, but I'm more scared of what happens if we don't stand up. If we let a man like Jasper Hartwell go on hurting people, killing people, taking everything we've worked for." "Easy for you to say," a voice called from the back. "You've got nothing to lose." "I've got everything to lose." Caleb's voice was quiet, but it carried. 8 years ago, I lost my wife and son. I've spent every day since then hiding from that pain, hiding from life, hiding from anything that might make me feel something. He looked at Emma. And then this child knocked on my door, bleeding, beaten, running from a monster. And I had a choice. I could turn away, keep hiding, keep pretending the world wasn't my problem, or I could open the door. The church was silent. I opened the door, and I'm asking you to do the same. Open your doors. Open your hearts. Stand with us against a man who's been terrorizing this territory for 3 years. What can we do? Martha stood up. He's got money, power, the law on his side. He's got a forged document and a corrupt judge who's about to face federal charges. Caleb held up the telegram. This came from Helena this morning. Jasper's guardianship papers are fraudulent. Judge Wade's signature was forged, and there's a warrant waiting to be issued. The murmur became a roar. But that's just paper. Caleb raised his voice. What really matters is what's in this room, right now. How many of you have been hurt by Jasper Hartwell? How many have lost family property? Peace of mind. Hands went up. 12, 24, more. Every one of those hands is a story. A crime that went unpunished because we were too afraid to speak. Well, tonight we speak. Tonight we drag his darkness into the light. The church doors burst open. Jasper Hartwell strode in, flanked by the Grady brothers and 6 armed men. Judge Wade followed behind his face, pale with fear. This gathering is illegal. Jasper's voice cut through the silence. An unauthorized assembly intended to undermine legal authority. Sheriff Dixon, arrest these people. Dixon stepped forward, but not toward Caleb, toward Jasper. Jasper Hartwell. Dixon's voice shook but held. You're under arrest for fraud, forgery, and suspicion of murder in the deaths of Thomas and Catherine Hartwell. Jasper's face went rigid. Have you lost your mind? No, I've found it. Dixon pulled a paper from his coat. This telegram from the territorial clerk's office confirms that Judge Wade's signature on your guardianship documents is a forgery. The federal government is investigating. Jasper turned to Wade. Tell them it's a lie. Wade's face had gone gray. I didn't sign those papers, Jasper. You told me. Shut up. You told me they were just formalities, that the girl would be better off with you. I didn't know. I said shut up. Caleb stepped forward. Emma, it's time. The little girl walked to the altar. Every eye in the church was on her. She turned to face the crowd, her hands clasped in front of her, her voice steady. My name is Emma Grace Hartwell. My parents were Thomas and Catherine Hartwell. They died last September when their wagon crashed on Miller's Pass. She paused. But it wasn't an accident. My uncle sabotaged the wheel. I heard him planning it. Lies. Jasper's voice was sharp. The word of a traumatized child. Then explain this. Emma turned her back to the crowd and lifted her shirt. Gasps echoed through the church. Women cried out. Men cursed. The belt marks were visible even from the back pews. Deep welts crossing her skin like railroad tracks. Some fresh, some scarred white from months of abuse. Your uncle did this? Reverend Brooks asked, his voice thick with emotion. Every time I ran, every time I told someone what really happened to my parents, every time I refused to pretend he wasn't a monster. Emma lowered her shirt and faced the crowd. He told me no one would believe me, told me the whole town belonged to him, told me I'd never escape. She looked directly at Jasper. He was wrong. The crowd erupted. voices overlapping, anger building, years of suppressed rage finally finding an outlet. He burned my store. He poisoned my horses. He threatened my family. He killed my husband. Clara's voice cut through the chaos. 3 years ago, my husband James died in a mine explosion. The company called it an accident. 2 weeks later, Jasper bought the mining rights for a fraction of their value. She stepped forward. My daughter was in that mine visiting her father. She was 8 years old. Jasper's composure cracked. This is absurd. You're all insane. These are baseless accusations from bitter people who... Who what? Caleb moved toward him. Who watched you take everything they had? Who buried their families while you counted your profits? Who stayed silent because you made them afraid? He stopped 2 feet from Jasper, close enough to see the sweat on his forehead, the fear in his eyes. They're not afraid anymore. Jasper's hand moved toward his coat. The click of a dozen rifles being cocked froze him in place. The crowd had armed itself. Farmers with hunting rifles, miners with pistols, women with shotguns they'd hidden under shawls. It's over, Jasper. Sheriff Dixon moved forward with the shackles. You're under arrest, you and your men. Saucho. The territorial marshal will be here by week's end. Jasper looked around the church at the faces of people he'd terrorized for 3 years. Some were crying. Some were stone-faced with rage. All of them were staring at him like he was a rabid dog that needed putting down. You can't do this. His voice cracked. I have rights. I have money. I have nothing. Emma walked toward him, small but unafraid. You have nothing. Just like you tried to leave me with nothing. She stopped in front of him. My papa trusted me to Mr. Thornton because he knew you were a monster. He knew you'd come for our land, for our lives. And he knew that someday I'd find someone willing to fight for me. She reached up and pulled the silver ring from his finger. This was my papa's, the Hartwell family ring. You took it from his body before the ground was cold. She turned and walked to Caleb, placed the ring in his hand. I don't need it anymore. I already have a family. Caleb closed his fingers around the ring, felt the weight of it, the meaning. Take him, he said to Dixon. Take all of them. Let the federal court sort out the charges. As the Grady brothers and Jasper's men were led away, as Judge Wade stumbled after them, babbling about how he didn't know, as the church filled with the sounds of relief and joy and grief finally finding expression. Emma slipped her hand into Caleb's. Is it over? Caleb watched Jasper disappear through the church doors, shoulders slumped, empire crumbling. Almost, but not quite. What's left? He looked down at her, at the fierce green eyes and the stubborn chin, and the courage that had survived everything a monster could throw at it, making it official, making sure no one can ever take you away again. Emma smiled, really smiled, for the first time since she'd knocked on his door. I'd like that. Then let's go home. They walked out of the church together into the cold night, into a future that finally held promise instead of fear. Behind them, the town of Silver Creek was beginning the long process of healing. Ahead of them, the stars burned bright and steady, lighting the way home. The hired guns arrived at dawn. Caleb heard the horses before he saw them. 5 riders coming fast from the east, pushing through snow that had fallen overnight. He'd been awake since 3, watching the trails, waiting for what he knew was coming. Emma slept in the cabin behind him, exhausted from the night before. The town meeting had drained her in ways she didn't understand yet, telling her story, showing her scars, facing the man who'd made her life a nightmare. She'd fallen asleep in the wagon on the way home, and Caleb had carried her inside without waking her. Now, he stood on the porch with his rifle, watching death ride toward him. The riders stopped at the tree line. 5 men, hard-looking with the easy posture of professionals. They'd been paid to do a job, and jail or no jail, they intended to do it. Thornton, the lead rider's voice carried across the snow. We're here for the girl. She's not available. Mr. Hartwell paid us in advance, full amount. Job gets done regardless of his current situation. Then I suggest you ride back to wherever you came from and keep the money. Consider it compensation for a wasted trip." The rider laughed, not a pleasant sound. "5 of us. 1 of you. Even a big man bleeds Thornton." "He ain't alone." Sheriff Dixon emerged from the tree line behind the cabin, rifle raised. Behind him, Henry Holloway from the livery, and old Ben Sawyer with his ancient but well-maintained sharps. "Neither are we," the lead rider said. But there was hesitation in his voice now. This wasn't what he'd been told to expect. "Let me explain your situation." Dixon moved forward, keeping his rifle steady. "Jasper Hartwell is in my jail awaiting federal charges. The judge who signed your contract is fled to California. The guardianship papers you're enforcing are proven forgeries. We got paid. You got paid to kidnap a child and kill a man. That's federal crime, son. Hanging offenses." The riders exchanged glances. Professional killers they might be, but professionals knew when the odds had changed. "What's stopping us from riding in, taking the girl, and disappearing before any federal marshal gets here? Me." Caleb stepped off the porch, rifle at his side. "I'm stopping you. You're one man. I'm one man who's got nothing left to lose and everything to protect. You want to test that?" He walked toward them, slow and steady. "Come on then. Let's see what you've got." The lead rider's hand moved toward his holster. Caleb's rifle came up. Click. "I was at Gettysburg. Spent 3 days in a foxhole shooting men who came at me with everything they had. Killed 18 before they pulled me out. You want to be number 19? The rider's hand stopped. "This ain't worth dying for," one of the others muttered. "We got paid, but we didn't sign up for no war." "Smart man." Dixon moved closer. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to turn those horses around and ride out. You're going to keep riding until you hit the territorial border, and you're never going to set foot in Silver Creek again. And if we don't, then we bury you here and tell the marshal you fell off your horses." The leader looked at Caleb, at Dixon, at the other armed men emerging from the trees, at the situation that had gone from easy money to potential massacre in the span of 5 minutes. "Keep the money," he said finally. "Buy yourselves something nice." He wheeled his horse and rode. The others followed, quickly disappearing into the gray morning light. Caleb let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Dixon lowered his rifle. "That was closer than I'd like. Close counts in horseshoes and hand grenades." Caleb watched the riders until they were gone from sight. "They won't be back." "How do you know?" "Because they're professionals. Professionals cut their losses and move on. It's the amateurs who hold grudges." The cabin door opened. Emma stood there in Caleb's oversized shirt, her feet bare, her eyes wide. "I heard voices. I thought—" "It's okay." Caleb crossed to her, lifted her onto his hip. "Just some men who took a wrong turn. They're gone now. Forever. Forever." She buried her face in his neck. He felt her small body relax, tension draining away. "Can we go back to bed now?" "In a minute. I need to talk to the sheriff first." Dixon approached the porch. "The territorial marshal will be here in 3 days. He'll want statements from everyone. You, Emma, Clara, the Reverend. We'll be ready. And Caleb—" Dixon hesitated. "I owe you an apology. For everything. For looking away when I should have looked closer. For bringing Emma back to that monster when I knew something was wrong." "You already apologized." "Words are cheap. I want to make it right." "Then help us make sure Jasper never hurts anyone again. That's how you make it right." Dixon nodded slowly. "The evidence is solid. The telegram about the forged signature. The will naming you as guardian. My journal documenting 3 years of suspicious deaths. Plus Emma's testimony and the scars to prove it." He paused. "He's going to hang Caleb. There's no way out for him this time." "Good." It was a hard word, but Caleb meant it. Some men didn't deserve mercy. Some men had spent their mercy on cruelty and greed and violence. Jasper Hartwell was one of those men. Get some rest, Dixon said. You look like you haven't slept in days. Haven't? Then start. The hard part's over. But Caleb knew better. The hard part was never over. It just changed shape. He carried Emma back inside and laid her on the bed. She was already drifting off again, the exhaustion of the past week finally catching up. Stay, she murmured. Don't leave. I'm not going anywhere. He sat in the chair beside the bed and watched her sleep. Her face was peaceful now, the fear finally fading. She looked younger than she had since he'd met her. More like the child she was supposed to be. He thought about his son Samuel. About the boy who'd never had a chance to grow up. About all the things he'd planned to teach him, all the moments they'd never share. Emma wasn't Samuel. She never would be. But maybe that was okay. Maybe the point wasn't to replace what he'd lost, but to honor it by giving someone else a chance. His hand found the small wooden wagon on his workbench. The one he'd been making for Samuel. The one he'd never finished. Maybe it was time to finish it. He picked up his carving knife and began to work. The territorial marshal arrived 3 days later, just as Dixon had promised. His name was Thomas Reed, a big man with a bigger mustache and eyes that missed nothing. He'd brought 2 deputies and a stack of federal warrants. Mr. Thornton, Reed shook his hand firmly. I've heard a lot about you over the past few days. Good things, I hope? Depends on your definition of good. Reed glanced at Emma, who was hovering near Caleb's elbow. This the girl Emma Hartwell. Emma Grace Hartwell. Though if things go the way I hope, she'll be Emma Thornton before long. Reed pulled out a notebook. Tell me everything, from the beginning. So Caleb told him, about the knock on the door, about the child collapsing on his threshold, about the belt marks and the fear, and the 3-mile walk through a blizzard, about Jasper's threats and the forged documents, and the corrupt judge who'd fled rather than face justice. Emma added her own testimony. The sabotaged wagon, the overheard conversation, the 4 months of beatings and starvation and terror. Clara testified about the telegraph line. Dixon provided his journal. Reverend Brooks produced the will and confirmed its authenticity. By the time they were done, Reed had filled 3 notebooks. This is one of the most comprehensive fraud cases I've seen in 20 years. He closed the last notebook. Murder, forgery, extortion, child abuse. Jasper Hartwell is going to spend the rest of his very short life in federal custody. When's the trial? 2 weeks. Federal court in Helena. They're fast-tracking it given the severity of the charges. Reed looked at Emma. You'll need to testify again, Miss Hartwell, in front of judges and lawyers and a lot of people you don't know. Emma's hand tightened on Caleb's, but her voice was steady. I'll do it, whatever it takes. Brave girl, Reed smiled. Your father would be proud. He is proud, I can feel it. After Reed left, Caleb and Emma walked back to the cabin. The weather had warmed slightly, the first hint that spring might eventually arrive. Water dripped from icicles on the roof. 2 weeks, Emma said. And then it's really over. And then it's really over. What happens after? Caleb stopped walking. Knelt down so he was at her level. What do you want to happen? I want to stay here. With you. She hesitated. If you want me. Emma. His voice was rough. I've wanted you since the moment you knocked on my door. I just didn't know how to say it. Because you're scared. Because I lost a child once. Because loving someone means risking losing them. And I wasn't sure I could survive that again. But you're sure now. He thought about it. About the hired guns he'd faced down that morning. About the town meeting where he'd stood against a monster. About all the ways he'd changed since a broken child fell across his threshold. I'm sure that being afraid isn't the same as being safe. I'm sure that hiding from love doesn't protect you from loss. And I'm sure that whatever time I get with you is worth whatever pain might come after. Emma threw her arms around his neck. Does this mean you're my papa now? Not officially, not yet. But the marshal's filing adoption papers with the federal court. Once Jasper's dealt with and your parents' estate is settled, We can make it legal. How long? Few months probably. Legal things take time. That's okay. Emma pulled back, smiling through tears. I can wait. I'm good at waiting. They walked the rest of the way in comfortable silence. That night, Clara came to dinner. She'd been a regular visitor since the town meeting, bringing food and news, and the kind of company that Caleb had forgotten he needed. Tonight she'd brought venison stew and fresh bread from the bakery in town. The whole territory's talking about what happened. She set the pot on the stove to warm. Jasper Hartwell, the great land baron brought down by a hermit and a little girl. We had help. You had courage. The help came because of the courage. Clara smiled at Emma, who was setting the table with the careful precision of someone who'd never had her own table to set before. How are you holding up, little one? Better. The nightmares are getting less. They'll fade eventually. Trust me on that. Caleb watched the two of them, woman and child, moving around his cabin like they belonged there. Something warm settled in his chest. Clara, I've been thinking. Dangerous habit. I've got a ranch to run and a child to raise. The Hartwell property, once the estate's settled, that's going to be Emma's. 800 acres prime grazing land. I'm going to need help managing it all. Clara's hands stilled on the bread knife. What kind of help? The kind that knows how to run a business. Keep books. Manage accounts. He met her eyes. The kind that might be interested in a partnership. A business partnership. To start. The air between them charged with something unspoken. Emma looked from one to the other with barely contained excitement. I don't need rescuing Caleb Thornton. My husband's been dead 3 years. I've managed fine on my own. I know you have. That's why I'm asking. And if I say no, then I'll find someone else, but I won't find someone better. Clara was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled, slow and warm. I'll think about it. That's all I'm asking. Emma bounced on her heels. Say yes, Mrs. Whitfield. Please say yes. I said I'd think about it. But Clara's eyes were soft as she looked at the child. Now eat your dinner before it gets cold. They ate together, the three of them, talking about ordinary things. The weather, the town, the plans for spring planting once the snow melted. It felt natural. It felt right. It felt like family. After dinner, Clara left with a promise to return the next day. Emma helped Caleb clean up, drying the dishes as he washed them, their rhythm easy and practiced. You like her, Emma said. Mrs. Whitfield. I do. Like, Caleb felt his face warm. You're too young to be asking questions like that. I'm 10. I know about things. What things? Things like when a man looks at a woman the way you look at her. Papa used to look at Mama like that. Like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life. Caleb set down the dish he was washing. You're too smart for your own good, you know that. Mama used to say the same thing. Emma smiled. I take it as a compliment. It is. They finished the dishes in comfortable silence. Emma went to bed early, still recovering from the exhaustion of the past week. Caleb sat by the fire, the small wooden wagon in his hands. He'd been working on it every night since the town meeting, carving the wheels, sanding the edges, fitting the pieces together with the care and precision he'd learned from his father. It was almost done now. Another day or two, and it would be finished. 8 years he'd carried this unfinished project. 8 years of grief and guilt and the inability to let go. But now finally, he understood. The wagon wasn't about Samuel anymore. It was about all the children. The one he'd lost and the one he'd found. The past he couldn't change and the future he was building. He picked up his knife and kept carving. The next morning, visitors started arriving. First came the Chens, Henry and his wife Mary, with a basket of preserved vegetables from their root cellar. For the child, Mary said, pressing the basket into Caleb's hands. She needs feeding up. Too thin. Thank you, ma'am. No. Henry's voice was gruff. Thank you. For what you did. for standing up when nobody else would. They left before Caleb could respond. Then came the Holloways with a side of bacon. The Bradshaw clan with blankets and tools. The schoolteacher Miss Patterson with books for Emma. She should keep learning, Miss Patterson said. She's a bright girl, shouldn't waste that mind. I'll make sure she studies. Every day. Every day. By afternoon, the cabin was full of gifts and well-wishes. The town that had once looked away was now trying to make amends, one kind gesture at a time. Emma sat in the middle of it all, overwhelmed and grateful, and not quite believing it was real. "Why are they doing this?" she asked Caleb. "They didn't care before." They cared. They were just too scared to show it. And now they're not scared anymore. Now they've seen what's possible when people stop being afraid. He knelt beside her. "That's what you gave them, Emma. Hope, courage, the belief that things could be different. All I did was tell the truth. Sometimes that's the hardest thing in the world." That evening, Reverend Brooks came to the cabin with news. Judge Wade's been arrested in San Francisco. Federal marshals picked him up trying to board a ship to Mexico. The old man's satisfaction was barely contained. He's being extradited to Helena to face charges. Good. And there's more. The territorial governor has appointed a special prosecutor to investigate all of Jasper's land acquisitions. The Chen family's store, the Whitfield mining rights, everything. Brooks paused. There may be reparations for the families Jasper hurt. Caleb thought about Clara, about James and their daughter buried together 3 years ago. Money won't bring back the dead. No, but it might help the living move forward. After Brooks left, Caleb found Emma at the window, staring out at the darkening sky. "Stars are coming out," she said. "Mama used to say each star was someone's wish." "What do you wish for?" She was quiet for a long moment. "I used to wish for my parents to come back. Every night, every star, the same wish over and over." Her voice was soft. "But now I think maybe they sent me something better." "What's that?" "A new family. Not to replace them. Just to add to what they gave me." She turned to look at him. "Is that okay? To love new people without forgetting the old ones?" Caleb felt his throat tighten. "It's more than okay. It's exactly what they would have wanted." "How do you know?" "Because it's what I would want, if I was gone and you were still here." He pulled her close. "I'd want you to be happy, to be loved, to find people who would take care of you and protect you and help you grow. Like you. Like me." She leaned against him, and they watched the stars together until the sky was full of light. "Papa." The word came out hesitant, testing. Caleb's heart stopped. "Yes. Can I call you that, Papa?" He couldn't speak, could only nod. "Okay." She smiled, small and bright and full of hope. "Okay, Papa." That night, after Emma was asleep, Caleb finished the wagon. He held it up in the lamplight, examining every detail. The wheels that spun smooth and true. The bed that was just the right size for small hands. The carved horses on the front running free across an endless plain. It was perfect. After 8 years, it was finally perfect. He set it on the table beside Emma's bed. She'd find it in the morning, and he'd tell her about Samuel. About the father he'd been and the father he was learning to be. About how love doesn't end, it just changes shape. Then he went to the window and looked up at the stars. "I kept my promise," he said to no one. To everyone. To Anna and Samuel and all the ghosts he'd been carrying for so long. "I opened the door. I let someone in. And I'm going to be okay." The stars didn't answer, but somehow Caleb knew they'd heard. Emma found the wagon at dawn. Caleb was already awake, stoking the fire, when he heard her gasp. He turned to see her sitting up in bed, the small wooden toy cradled in her hands like something precious. "You made this. Finished it last night. It's beautiful." She ran her fingers over the carved horses, The spinning wheels, the smooth grain of the wood. Who was it for? Caleb crossed to the bed and sat beside her. My son, Samuel. I started making it when my wife was pregnant. Was going to give it to him for his first birthday. His voice was steady, but the words came hard. He died before I could finish it. They both did, Anna and Samuel. 8 years ago. Emma looked up at him with eyes that had seen too much. That's why you lived alone. That's why you hid. I thought if I stayed away from people, stayed away from caring, I couldn't lose anyone else. Couldn't hurt like that again. But you let me in. You didn't give me much choice. A smile tugged at his mouth, falling across my threshold, bleeding all over my floor. Hard to ignore. I'm sorry about your family, about Samuel and Anna. So am I, every day. Caleb took her hand. But I'm not sorry you found me. Not sorry I opened that door. Whatever comes next, I'm grateful for that. Emma set the wagon carefully on the bedside table. Will you tell me about them? Sometime about what they were like. Sometime? When we're both ready. Okay. She slid out of bed, her bare feet finding the cold floor. What happens today? Today we go to Helena. The trial starts tomorrow. Emma's face tightened. I have to testify again. You have to finish what you started, but I'll be right there with you. Every minute. Promise. Promise. They left before noon, joining a procession that had grown larger than Caleb expected. Clara rode beside them, in her own wagon. Sheriff Dixon and his wife followed behind. The Chens, the Holloways, the Bradshaws. Reverend Brooks in his black coat and white collar. Half the town, it seemed, was making the 3-day journey to Helena. They're coming to support you, Clara told Emma as they watched the line of wagons stretching behind them. All of them. Why? Because you gave them their town back, their self-respect, their belief that standing up for what's right actually matters. Clara smiled. You're a symbol now, little one, whether you want to be or not. I just wanted to be safe. Sometimes being safe means fighting for everyone else who isn't. That's what you did. That's what they're honoring. Helena was bigger than Silver Creek, louder, more crowded. The federal courthouse loomed at the end of the main street, its white columns bright against the gray winter sky. Marshal Reed met them at the courthouse steps. Trial set for tomorrow morning. Judge Harrison is presiding. He's fair, no connections to Hartwell or Wade. Reed looked at Emma. You ready, Miss Hartwell? It's Emma, and yes, I'm ready. Good girl. They spent the night in a boarding house near the courthouse. Emma slept in Caleb's room, the small wooden wagon on the nightstand beside her. She'd refused to leave it behind. It helps, she'd said when he asked. Knowing you finished it, knowing you didn't give up. The courtroom was full when they arrived the next morning. Jasper Hartwell sat at the defendant's table, his face drawn and pale. He'd lost weight in the weeks since his arrest, lost the smooth confidence that had made him so dangerous. Now he looked like what he was, a small man whose cruelty had finally caught up with him. Judge Harrison called the court to order. The prosecutor, a young man named Sullivan, laid out the case with methodical precision. The forged guardianship documents. The sabotaged wagon that killed Thomas and Catherine Hartwell. The pattern of land acquisitions following suspicious deaths. The abuse of a child left in his care. Witness after witness took the stand. Sheriff Dixon testified about his journal. Clara about the cut telegraph line. Reverend Brooks about the will Thomas Hartwell had left in his keeping. Henry Chen about the threats against his store. The schoolteacher about Jasper's attempted assault. And then it was Emma's turn. She walked to the witness stand with her head high, her small feet steady on the wooden floor. Caleb watched from the gallery, his hands gripping the rail in front of him. State your name for the record, Sullivan said. Emma Grace Hartwell. And your relationship to the defendant. He's my uncle, my father's brother. Can you tell the court what happened on the night of September 15th, 1884? Emma took a breath. Her eyes found Caleb's in the crowd, and something passed between them. Courage given and received. I was in my room at our ranch. It was late after supper. I heard voices in my father's study, my Uncle Jasper and another man. Could you identify the other man? No, sir. I never saw his face, but I heard what they said. And what was that? My uncle said, it has to look like an accident. The wheel hub is the weak point. The other man said, consider it done. And then my uncle said, once Thomas is out of the way, the girl is my responsibility, and everything else follows. The courtroom stirred. Jasper's lawyer rose to object, but Judge Harrison waved him down. Continue, Miss Hartwell. 2 days later, my parents' wagon crashed on Miller's Pass. The wheel came off. Papa tried to control the horses, but Emma's voice wavered. They went over the edge. Mama was killed instantly. Papa died in the hospital 3 days later. He never woke up. And after your parents died? Uncle Jasper came. He had papers, said he was my legal guardian, said our ranch was his to manage. Emma's hands twisted in her lap. He moved us to a house in town, started selling off our cattle, our furniture, anything valuable. And when I tried to tell people what I'd heard when I tried to run away. What happened when you tried to run away, Emma? She turned her back to the courtroom, unbuttoned the top of her dress, and pulled it down just far enough to show the scars. The gallery erupted. Women cried out. Men cursed. Judge Harrison banged his gavel for order. He did that to you. Sullivan's voice was tight with controlled rage. Every time I ran, every time I tried to tell someone the truth, he said he'd beat the lies out of me. Emma turned back around, pulling her dress closed. But they weren't lies. They were never lies. Objection. Jasper's lawyer stood. The witness is a child. Her testimony is unreliable. She could have sustained those injuries anywhere. Those are belt marks, Your Honor. Sullivan approached the bench. The pattern matches a distinctive silver buckle recovered from Mr. Hartwell's personal effects. The same buckle multiple witnesses saw him wearing in the months before his arrest. He held up the buckle. 3 horses stamped in relief. Would you like to examine it, Miss Hartwell? Emma looked at the buckle. Her face went pale, but her voice stayed steady. That's it. That's what he hit me with. I'd recognize it anywhere. The trial lasted 3 days. When the jury retired to deliberate, Caleb found Emma sitting on the courthouse steps, her face turned up to the winter sun. You did good in there. I told the truth, that's all. Sometimes that's everything. She leaned against his shoulder. Do you think they'll believe me? I think they already do. The jury came back in less than an hour. Guilty on all counts. The courtroom exploded with noise. Clara grabbed Caleb's arm, tears streaming down her face. Sheriff Dixon closed his eyes in relief. The people of Silver Creek embraced each other, their nightmare finally over. Jasper Hartwell sat motionless at the defendant's table, staring at nothing. Mr. Hartwell. Judge Harrison's voice cut through the chaos. You have been found guilty of murder in the first-degree conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, forgery, and aggravated assault of a minor. Have you anything to say before I pass sentence? Jasper rose slowly. For a moment, Caleb thought he would finally show some remorse, finally acknowledge the lives he'd destroyed. The land was mine. Jasper's voice was hollow. It was always supposed to be mine. Father promised it to me before Thomas was even born. Then he changed his mind, gave everything to his precious younger son, left me with nothing. Mr. Hartwell, I only took what was rightfully mine, what should have been mine from the beginning. Judge Harrison's face was stone. Mr. Hartwell, you murdered your own brother and his wife to steal their land. You beat and terrorized their orphaned daughter. You corrupted officials, forged documents, and destroyed the lives of innocent families who stood in your way. He paused. I sentence you to death by hanging sentence to be carried out at the territorial prison within 30 days. May God have mercy on your soul. The gavel came down like a gunshot. Emma didn't watch as they led Jasper away. She'd seen enough of him to last a lifetime. That evening, Marshal Reed found Caleb at the boarding house. "The adoption papers are ready." Judge Harrison agreed to expedite them given the circumstances. He handed Caleb a document. "All you need to do is sign." Caleb looked at the paper, at the words that would make Emma his daughter in the eyes of the law. "Emma should see this first." "She already has. I showed her this morning, asked if she wanted to proceed." "And?" Reed smiled. She said, "Why are you asking me? He's already my papa." Caleb signed the paper. They held a small ceremony at the Helena courthouse the next day. Just the people who mattered most: Clara and Martha Dixon, Reverend Brooks, the Chens and the Holloways. Sheriff Dixon standing at the back, his hat in his hands. Judge Harrison presided. "Mr. Thornton, do you swear to raise Emma Grace Hartwell as your own daughter, to provide for her, protect her, and love her as any father should?" "I do." "And Emma, do you accept Caleb Thornton as your father? Do you take his name as your own?" Emma stood beside Caleb, her hand clasped in his. "I do. I accept him. I choose him." She looked up at Caleb with a smile that lit her whole face. "I've been choosing him since I knocked on his door. Then by the power vested in me by the territory of Wyoming, I hereby declare this adoption legal and binding. Emma, you are now officially Emma Grace Thornton." The small crowd applauded. Clara wiped her eyes. Reverend Brooks murmured a blessing. Caleb knelt down and pulled Emma into his arms. "Hey there, Emma Thornton." "Hey there, Papa." "How does it feel?" "Like coming home." She buried her face against his shoulder. "Like finally coming home." They returned to Silver Creek 3 days later. Spring was coming. The ice on the creek had started to crack. Water ran beneath dark and swift, carrying away the winter's dead weight. The trees showed the first faint hints of green. The cabin looked different when they arrived. Someone had strung new curtains in the windows, yellow fabric that caught the light. A wreath of dried flowers hung on the door. "Who did this?" Emma asked. "The women in town." Clara dismounted beside them. "They wanted you to have something nice to come home to. It's beautiful. Wait until you see inside." The cabin had been transformed. New quilts on the beds, dishes in the cupboards, food in the pantry. A small desk by the window, just the right size for a child with books and paper and a set of pencils. "For your studies," Clara said. "Miss Patterson sent the books. She's expecting you at school starting next week." "School?" Emma's eyes went wide. "Real school. Real school. With other children your age. Friends maybe when you're ready." Emma ran her fingers over the books. Arithmetic, geography, poetry. Things she'd been denied for 4 months while Jasper kept her locked away. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you all." Over the following weeks, life found a new rhythm. Emma went to school, made friends slowly. The other children were curious about her, about the trial that had made her famous throughout the territory. Some were kind, some were cautious. All of them eventually accepted her as one of their own. Caleb returned to his workshop. The wagon orders came flooding in now that people knew his name. He hired a helper then too. Expanded the workshop to handle the demand. Clara came by every day. She helped with the books, the orders, the 1,000 small tasks that came with running a growing business. She ate dinner with them most nights. Told stories that made Emma laugh. Listened when Caleb needed to talk about things he couldn't say to anyone else. One evening in late April, after Emma had gone to bed, Caleb and Clara sat on the porch watching the stars come out. "I've been thinking about your offer," Clara said. "The partnership. And I accept on one condition." "Name it." She turned to look at him. Her gray eyes were soft in the darkness. "You stop pretending this is just business." Caleb felt his heart beat faster. "What else would it be?" "I think you know." Clara reached over and took his hand. "I've been alone for 3 years, Caleb. Grieving. hiding from anything that might make me feel something. Sound familiar? Might ring a bell. When I saw you stand up at that town meeting, when I watched you fight for that little girl like she was the most important thing in the world, I felt something I hadn't felt since James died. She squeezed his hand. Hope. That's what you gave me, you and Emma both. Clara, I'm not asking for promises. I'm not asking for declarations. I'm just asking you to stop treating me like a business partner when we both know that's not what this is. Caleb was quiet for a long moment. He thought about Anna, about the life they'd built together, the life that had ended too soon, about the guilt he'd carried for years, the feeling that moving on meant betraying her memory. Anna would have liked you, he said finally. She would have wanted me to be happy. And are you happy? He looked through the window at Emma, asleep in her bed, with the wooden wagon on her nightstand, at the cabin that had become a home, at the woman beside him, whose hand fit perfectly in his. Getting there, Clara smiled. Good enough for now. She leaned over and kissed his cheek. Just a brush of lips against skin, a promise of things to come. Good night, Caleb. Good night, Clara. He watched her ride away, her figure disappearing into the darkness. Then he went inside to check on Emma. She was awake, pretending to sleep. I heard you talking. You were supposed to be asleep. I was curious. Emma opened one eye. Are you going to marry her? I haven't asked. You should. She'd say yes. How do you know? Because she looks at you the way Mama used to look at Papa, like you're the answer to a question she's been asking her whole life. Caleb sat on the edge of her bed. Would that be okay with you if Clara was part of our family? She already is. Emma yawned. She just doesn't know it yet. Go to sleep, wise one. You too, Papa. Big day tomorrow. What's tomorrow? First day of spring. The creek's going to be running full. You promised we'd go fishing. So I did. He kissed her forehead and retreated to his chair by the fire. Summer came, and with it, change. Jasper's execution was carried out in June. Caleb didn't attend. Neither did Emma. They spent that day at the creek instead, fishing and laughing and talking about nothing important. The Hartwell estate was settled in July. Emma inherited everything. 800 acres of prime grazing land, now held in trust until she came of age with Caleb as executor. The railroad paid handsomely for right-of-way access, and suddenly the Thornton family had more money than they'd ever dreamed. What do we do with all this? Emma asked, staring at the bank statements. Whatever we want, whatever helps people. They started with the families Jasper had hurt. The Chens got funds to rebuild their store bigger and better than before. The Holloways received compensation for their poisoned horses. Clara was given full ownership of the mining rights that had cost James his life. I don't want his blood money, she'd said at first. It's not his money anymore, Caleb had replied. It's justice. Take it and build something good. She did. A school for miners' children. A library. A clinic where people could get medical care without traveling to Helena. The town changed. Slowly, steadily, the fear and suspicion that Jasper had cultivated gave way to something else. Trust. Community. The feeling that Silver Creek was finally becoming the place it was always meant to be. One evening in August, Caleb took Clara and Emma to the spot where his cabin met the creek. The water ran clear and cold, catching the last light of the setting sun. I've got something to ask, he said. Both of you. Emma bounced on her heels, clearly in on a secret she could barely keep. Clara looked at him with knowing eyes. Something to ask or something to say. Both maybe. He pulled a small box from his pocket. Inside was a ring, silver and simple, with a single blue stone that matched Clara's eyes. I'm not good at speeches. Never have been. But I know that when you walked into my life, when both of you walked into my life, something changed. Something that had been broken started healing. He looked at Emma. You knocked on my door and I let you in. Best decision I ever made. He looked at Clara. You walked into my cabin and I fell in love with you. Didn't mean to. Wasn't ready. But it happened anyway, and I'm done pretending it didn't." He held out the ring. "Clara Whitfield, will you marry me? Will you be Emma's mother? My wife, part of this family we're building together?" Clara's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling, brighter than he'd ever seen her smile. "I thought you'd never ask." "Is that a yes?" "Yes." She laughed. "Yes, you stubborn, wonderful man. Yes." Emma cheered. Caleb slid the ring onto Clara's finger, and then they were all hugging, all laughing, all crying at the same time. "When's the wedding?" Emma demanded. "Soon," Caleb said. "Before the snow comes." "Can I be in it?"
You can be whatever you want. I want to be the flower girl and the ring bearer, and I want to stand right next to you the whole time." Done. Clara knelt down and pulled Emma close. "Are you sure about this having me around all the time?" "Mrs. Whitfield." Emma's voice was serious. "I've been praying for you since the first time you came to dinner. Mama taught me to pray for the things I wanted most, and I wanted you." Clara couldn't speak, could only hold the child who had stolen her heart as surely as she'd stolen Caleb's. They walked home together as the stars came out. 3 people who had lost everything and found each other. 3 broken souls learning how to be whole again. The wedding took place in October with the whole town in attendance. Emma wore a white dress that Clara had made by hand. She walked down the aisle ahead of the bride, scattering autumn leaves instead of flowers, because she said flowers were too ordinary.
Clara wore blue, James's favorite color, a way of honoring the past while embracing the future. And Caleb stood at the altar in his best suit, watching the 2 women he loved walk toward him. Reverend Brooks performed the ceremony. His voice was stronger than it had been in years, restored by the redemption he'd finally earned. "Do you, Caleb Thornton, take Clara Whitfield to be your wife?" "I do." "And do you, Clara Whitfield, take Caleb Thornton to be your husband?" "I do." "Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife." The church erupted in applause. That night, after the celebration had ended and the guests had gone home, Caleb stood on the porch of their cabin with his new wife and his daughter. "Look at the stars," Emma said. "Mama used to say each one was someone's wish." "What do you wish for now?" Clara asked. Emma was quiet for a long moment. "Nothing. I have everything I need." Caleb pulled them both close. His family, his future, the answer to prayers he hadn't known he was praying. "You know," he said, 8 months ago I was the loneliest man in Wyoming. Living in a cabin in the mountains, hiding from the world, convinced I'd never feel anything again. And now I've got a daughter who's smarter than me, a wife who's too good for me, and a life I never thought I'd have." "Any regrets?" Clara asked. "Only one." "What's that?" "That I waited so long to open the door." Emma yawned against his shoulder. "But you did open it. That's what matters." "Yeah." Caleb looked up at the stars. "Yeah, I guess it is." They went inside together, leaving the door open behind them. Let the night air flow through. Let the past flow out. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new joys, new reasons to fight and love and hope. But tonight they were home. They were together. They were family. And that was enough. That was everything. Years later, when people asked Emma Thornton how she'd survived, how she'd escaped a monster and found her way to happiness, she always told them the same thing. "I knocked on a door, and someone opened it." That was the whole story. The simple truth that had changed everything. Because in the end, that's all any of us can do. Knock on the doors that might save us. Open the doors that might save someone else. And trust that on the other side there's someone waiting to catch us when we fall. Caleb Thornton had caught her. Clara had caught them both. And together they'd built something stronger than pain, stronger than fear, stronger than all the cruelty the world could throw at them. They'd built a family, not by blood, not by law, but by choice, by courage, by the simple radical act of caring for each other when caring was the hardest thing to do. And that family would last. Through seasons and years and all the changes time would bring. It would grow and strengthen and become a light in the darkness for everyone who knew them. Because some things are stronger than death, stronger than loss, stronger than all the storms that rage against us. Love is one of those things. Hope is another. And the stubborn, beautiful belief that no matter how dark the night, morning always comes. For Emma Thornton, morning had finally come, and it was glorious.